On today's Locked On Thunder podcast, what's the keys to game number 2 of this first round series for OKC against Memphis? Takeaways from game 1. The Grizzlies are going to play better, but how much better can they actually play?
You are Locked On Thunder, your daily Oklahoma City Thunder podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Let's get it going on the Locked On Thunder podcast on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I am your host, media member and beat writer for Thunder on SI, Rylan Stiles. Follow me on Twitter at Rylan_Stiles. Follow the show on Twitter at LOThunderPod. Email the show, LOThunderPod@gmail.com. On today's show, we're talking with Michael Martin. Let's Talk Thunder on YouTube, at Michael on Sports, across social media, about the Thunder Grizzlies first round series. It started out with a bang for the Thunder in game 1. Memphis was dead on arrival on Sunday afternoon. But game 2 is here. What adjustments can Memphis make? But, Michael, what a shellacking Oklahoma City put on Memphis in game 1.
Yeah, it was over right after tip-off. Like, the game tipped off at noon, and I think by 12:20 it was the time of death was pronounced for Memphis and the Grizzlies. But crazy game for the Thunder. Biggest game 1 margin of victory in NBA history. Happy to be a part of it, but I think ideally, hopefully, we get a closer game, but who knows in game 2.
Who knows? I mean, the content game was really robbed from this game 1 because it turns into a snoozer. There's no overreactions. There's no just massive adjustments that you can really dive into a ton, but we're going to try to get there coming up. But what was your biggest takeaway? There's a lot of meat on the bone, but your biggest takeaway from game 1?
I have a couple, but the biggest I would say is playing well despite a bad Shai game, where that was one of the really big concerns we had going into the playoffs. Which is like, if other teams can shut down Shai, which they didn't, I didn't think the Grizzlies did. I think he got to his spots and got to his shots, and he just didn't make them. But we had some really big concerns, like what happens in the non-Shai minutes. And J-Dub really took the reins in this one, took over, and really put it in full force, and really put this game away from the Grizzlies in a real way in the second quarter. But I was just really impressed because Shai starts out, 1 for 11, 1 for 12, never really gets it going. He has his lowest scoring game since the All-Star game with the Team Chuck. So it's been a very, very long time since he's scored less than 20 points. And I was just really impressed by the rest of the Thunder team's ability to sort of just pick up the slack, never really panic, and just say, Shai, sit over there, we got you, bro, and just sort of take control of this game and never look back.
Yeah, J-Dub, I think, is the big story from game 1, just because he's been under the microscope for 82 games now. And the contention of this team has been well thought of since the summertime. And whenever you've dove into, can they really fulfill these lofty goals of winning their first championship, going on this run, especially with their inexperience? It was going to be on the back of J-Dub being the number 2 option. And Jaylen played great. I mean, he was awesome defensively, but the whole team was. And then offensively, he picked up where he left off after coming back from that hip injury against Denver. Those 6 games in the regular season were fantastic from him. Game 1 in this series was fantastic from him. And look, does that mean that all the problems are fixed? Does that mean that this is how it's going to be forever? No, obviously not. It's only 1 game, but he only got the opportunity to play 1 game so far. And so far, he's passed this postseason test with flying colors, because the balancing act that he had of setting up his teammates and being a facilitator and being a true orchestrator and leader of the secondary unit, along with being aggressive as a scorer, getting to his spots in the mid-range, getting to the rim, playing in transition, all those things were fantastic from J-Dub. All those things look to be sustainable because you just see the change in him as a player as opposed to last season. Not to say there's not going to be any bumps that pop up down the road, but it was a very, very encouraging first sign from J-Dub, because that's like the biggest X factor in this whole playoff run is who's your co-star, who's your number 2 guy. And I think that J-Dub answered it pretty well. And I think that it's still a question mark in terms of when the series get tougher, when the postseason gets longer. But for right now, you have to feel excellent about J-Dub.
Yeah, I was feeling the same way. And like you mentioned, there's no guarantee. This is just like a switch that you switch on. And it's like, hey, he's just going to play well forever now. This is just how it is. I mean, we just saw Shai in my first mention of the things that stood out of him having a clunker. But Dub, to your point, stuffed the stat sheet 25, 6, 3, and 1 on 10 of 16 in only 25 minutes. He goes 0 of 5 from 3 and doesn't get to the line at all. But other than that, it's hard to really complain. Defensively, he was awesome, like you mentioned, just really making stuff tough on Jaren Jackson Jr. And we didn't really see him tested in this game, but it's not his fault because, like I mentioned earlier, he's the one who put this game away. So you can't really go, it's like, well, there was never a high leverage moment. It's like, well, because this guy put it away. So we still have some of those questions, and those tests will still be remaining throughout the playoffs, maybe into the series of like him and some of those tighter moments of what does he look like. But I think it's really important. If you had to choose, if you made me choose between the two of who has a better game one of just what I want between Dub and Shai, I'd rather have it be Dub because I know Shai's going to bounce back. But just getting this out of the way early for Dub, I think, is a really big thing.
And I think it's easy to forget once the party gets started in the Paycom Center and the Thunder just trounce Memphis, growing a 56-point lead. Don't even let Memphis score over 80 points and win 131-80. It's easy to then blur the lines of, it was always that way from the word go. They just were dominant, and they were played good from the word go. But after the first quarter, the Thunder were only up by 12, which is not a significant margin whenever you factor in the postseason and how basketball is a game of runs. And if you're Memphis, having just played 36 hours earlier, having the early tip-off, getting to the first quarter only down 12, to start the second quarter when you know Shai's going to be on the bench, you've got to be feeling really good. And you've got to feel like this is your moment. This is your opportunity to throw a punch and land one against Oklahoma City. And Jaylen Williams made it to where that's not so. And he did step up. And I think that that's something that's different from a year ago. Because a year ago, all we could talk about is this team and the non-Shai minutes in the playoffs. And another difference was just the ability to be on in game one. Obviously, completely different players, but you faced a Zionless Pelicans team last year, and they gave you their best punch in game one. The rest of the series was uncompetitive in a sweep. But in game one, they had a prayer at the end by CJ McCollum, which was a clean shot as far as prayers go, to beat you. And it was that razor thin. And then in this game one, you just got out to the races and had a different approach. And I think that that's kind of what's been interesting. I mean, we've been at practice this week, Michael, at practice again today. The verbiage of the team where they're talking about how, they understand that they're young, but they're trying to win a championship. And they're talking today about how it's just one game. And if they won by 1 point or 50 points, it'd only count for one in the race to 4 to win a playoff series. I think that there's just a different mentality. Would you say that's fair about this Thunder team?
Yeah, I think that's just the reality of the situation. But this team, it feels like the first round is almost an extension of the regular season for them as they sort of warm up. I think that we'll see a few things change as they go deeper and deeper into the playoffs and get challenged a little bit more. But that is the reality of the situation. Is like we're talking about biggest game one win in franchise history and NBA history. But if the Grizzlies come in here, pull off a miracle, and win by a single point, Rylan, tomorrow, then the series is 1-1. Who cares how much? You don't get a point differential advantage for winning by 51 compared to them winning by 1 in one of those games. Like, it's just not that doesn't count. So I think this team has put some things into perspective. They don't have the scars and the playoff experience like a lot of these other teams, but they still do have some going back to last year. And they added guys like Caruso and Hartenstein who have even more than the guys on the roster. So I think that you're seeing a team that's taking things into perspective and putting it in the grand scale of the playoffs of we have to win 16 games. So 1 of 16 is not a really big deal. Even 1 of 4 in a series isn't a really big deal. You just got to take it game by game, stack days, as Mark would say, until he's blue in the face, and just go throughout the series and take care of business.
I think that John Morant was totally right. And what you just said is totally right. If the Grizzlies win game 2, Sunday is irrelevant because all you're hoping for as the number 8 seed or as any underdog team that's playing on the road for the first 2 games of a series is to get that split and wrestle back away home court advantage. Then you regroup in your place and try to go pull off the upset as an underseeded team. And that's what Memphis is. That's what Memphis is aiming for. And that's why game 2, and I think especially the start of game 2, is so important. We'll talk about the keys and how much better Memphis can play on Tuesday coming up. But first, I want to say right now, my good friends over at FanDuel, go check out FanDuel today because the NBA playoffs are here, and FanDuel is giving new customers an incredible way to get in on the action. Right now, when you join FanDuel and place your first $5 bet, you're going to get $200 in bonus bets if your bet wins. I love using FanDuel because it makes betting easy. You can do player props, you can do spreads, over-unders, all that good stuff at FanDuel.com. And again, if you place your first $5 bet and you win, you get $250 in bonus bets. And they have NBA odds that you are going to love if you're in Oklahoma City. Not only is game 2 minus 14.5 point favorites for Oklahoma City, the money line in game 2 is minus 1,000. So you'd have to put down $100 to even make a couple bucks on this series. But the series win for OKC is minus 10,000. That's how lopsided this series is in Vegas at FanDuel.com. Go check it out today. We're back on the Lockdown Thunder podcast on the Lockdown Podcast Network, your teams every day. Joined today by Michael Martin. Let's Talk Thunder on YouTube at Michael on Sports. Michael, when you look at this series, game 2 is tonight on Tuesday. Memphis has promised to play better. And I think that that's a great promise because they couldn't play any worse. And now the question becomes, how much better can they play? I think the most important part of this game Tuesday is the first 5 minutes. And we could even extend it to the first 7. Just basically, who has the lead at the first stoppage? Because if the Thunder get out to a rip-roaring start and they're once again taking candy from a baby with these defensive possessions where they're suffocating you, getting stops, getting steals, and turning you over and getting out in transition and using it to spark their offense, then the crowd will be rocking. I think Memphis is ready to quit. They're ready to let go of the rope. That game, it's not inexcusable that Memphis lost game 1 to Oklahoma City. It's inexcusable that they got beat by this margin and lost 131 to 80 points in game 1. That just shows that they quit. They quit in game 1. And they have an inexperienced coach. They have a team that knows that they have no chance to win a series. And if you can jump on them, then it would be expected even for them to once again be dejected and once again quit in a game. If you give them life at the start of the second game, then all bets are off, and we'll have a series, I think, at least one that can go 5 games between these two teams. What would you say? Would you say that the start for this game obviously is important for both teams?
Yeah, I'd say you hit the nail on the head with that of just you can't let them build any confidence. You can't let them get out early and feel like, you know what, maybe we can play with this team. You want to strangle the life out of them really, really early. I don't want knock on wood. You can almost clip this because I'm ready to say this, but there's going to be some sort of altercation in this game. Something is going to happen because the Grizzlies are going to stand up for themselves because what else are they going to do? But yeah, if the Thunder come out and just blitz them, then it's over. But the Grizzlies, like, they have to get out to a fast start because 1, they're the less talented team, and then 2, they have no depth. Like, this Thunder team just goes on and on for days about guys of, like, you know, they played 11 guys in the first 13 minutes, and all of them are guys who would instantly be in the rotation for the Grizzlies. So their talent is just overwhelming, and I think that's going to beat them in the long haul as just sort of this war of attrition happens. But for the Grizzlies, like, you're going to need John Morant to draw some fouls. You're going to need to get Lou Dort off of him. You're going to need Shai to start slow again. You're going to need Jaren Jackson to look really, really good. Desmond Bane's going to have to hit some shots. Like, a bunch of things are going to have to happen where guys look really, really comfortable. I think that it's just a lot of things that have to go right for them that I just don't think will happen. And the reality is, like, Rylan, you can disagree with me on here. The Thunder win by 51. I don't feel like they played their A game, though. I feel like they beat down a team that was ready to give up, like you mentioned, and they played to that level. But if the Grizzlies didn't give up, I still think they beat them by about 20, which really reflects the season series because they beat them by about 20 every single game in the regular season this year. So I think even if they give up their all, I think this Thunder team still has another level they can go to. And the simplest thing to point at is Shai not playing well, J-Dub going 0 for 5 from 3, and then you even have, like, Caruso goes scoreless in 12 minutes. There's still a lot of cards left for Mark to play that haven't been done yet, but for the Grizzlies to have any chance in this game, it's going to have to be in the really early parts of it where they get off to a good start and start to build up a bit of a cushion.
Yeah, the Thunder, I don't think, played their A game, and they had this result. And I think that you look at this Thunder team as what we saw on this show 5 months ago about how they're an all-time great team 5 months ago. 5 months ago, the podcast about comparing them to the Warriors of these avalanche-like runs, because Memphis didn't start that way of quitting. They were down 12, and there was an altercation on the floor. It was a chippiness, dust up, however you want to phrase it. Whenever Shai blocked Edey and went to the ground, and J. Will got into it, barking with Edey, and you know it was a nothing burger in the end. But both teams are ready to tussle a little bit. Both teams are ready to have that fire that you think of when you think of playoff basketball. And then in a blink, it was 30-5 run. It was the Thunder just avalanching the Memphis Grizzlies out of this game. And so I think that with Memphis, they should and they will come out trying to throw a haymaker in game 2. It's their only course of action. It's their only hope in this series. And that will involve Zach Edey kind of elbowing guys and playing physical down low. It's going to have to include guys getting to the ground and getting on the ground for loose balls and trying to make up ground in the possession battle, because it's kind of baked into the cake that Memphis is going to have turnovers against Oklahoma City. You don't have playmakers that you trust. It's too easy for the Thunder to sell out on blitzing pick and rolls and playing the gaps and forcing Desmond Bane and John Morant and the like to make decisions that they're not capable of making, smart decisions with the basketball as playmakers, and that led to those turnovers on Sunday. So you're going to automatically be kind of with down the hill in terms of the possession battle, and you've got to make up for it with the hustle battle if you're Memphis, and that comes with chippiness, it comes with fire, and they better show it in game 2, because otherwise, when we're talking about how much better Memphis can play, they rarely got open shots on Sunday, and when they did, they missed them, right? Like they had the open Desmond Bane 3 that he missed. Like when they got open shots, they just didn't go in, and that cannot happen against Oklahoma City if you even want to be competitive. And if you want to win, it certainly cannot happen, because as Santi Aldama said it today, to beat a team like Oklahoma City, you have to play a perfect game. Memphis didn't play a perfect game, and the bad news for Memphis is neither did Oklahoma City, because Shai had a bad result, but the processing from Shai was all good shots. Like you go back and watch all of his shots that he took and that he missed. He missed some floaters at the rim that possibly could have been layups. I've seen some nitpicking on that, but with Zach Edey looming, you'd rather just try for the floater, a shot that he can hit that he didn't hit. And then he missed some threes. Like you had a Hartenstein wipe away screen of Scottie Pippen Jr. that freed up a wide open Shai 3. He didn't hit it. He missed the baseline fadeaway jumper that he hits routinely. That will be the calling card of his MVP sizzle reel, will be that baseline fadeaway that he's hit throughout the season. And he just didn't hit it on Sunday. You imagine that's going to happen on Tuesday. So I don't know how much better that Memphis can play. They certainly can play better than losing by 50, but it was an uninspiring game, even for my prediction. I was not bold enough to pick the Thunder to sweep. I thought it was way too hard for them to sweep this Grizzlies team. But of all the first-round predictions, we picked the whole first round for each conference. This is the one I feel like I could lose, is Thunder in 5. It might be Thunder in 4.
Yeah, I had Thunder in 4. This Grizzlies team, they have their tickets ready for Cancun. They have their bags packed. They're ready to go. And it just seems like the Thunder are going to put them out of their misery here. And like you mentioned, the Grizzlies, I think they can play better, but the thing is they can't play any more lackadaisical, or they can't play less hard, I guess it would be the thing. Because just after the first few minutes, like we've talked about, that thunderstorm, that avalanche just buries them and the game's over. But there's a lot of fun things to look forward to. One thing I wanted to mention earlier that I didn't get to was I think Chet really stood out to me with his rebounding, cleaning the glass. He only plays 21 minutes. Rylan, he gets 10 rebounds. That's more rebounds than he had in any single game last year against the Mavs in the second round. He got it in one game in 21 minutes. I think that's a really big deal. Obviously, they're not the Mavs. They don't have the same level of size just throughout their roster. They don't have those guys just going over and over and over. But I still think it's a massive deal, and we see him hit some threes. And, I asked Chet about it at practice before the series, and it's a little bit difficult to answer, but about if he feels somewhat fresher coming off this injury going into the playoffs than he did last year when he was healthy, just because he doesn't have the fatigue of going through 82 games. And he talked about, it's a different type of stress with the rehab and stuff, but I think that the motor is there, and we've seen it in the past, like even going back to the playoffs last year in round 1. When Chet is rested, he's a completely different player, and I think you saw that on display in game 1 the other night.
Yeah, I mean, the splits do it justice. I mean, you can go look at his basketball reference page and see how his averages creep up with the more days off in between games, and that's advantageous for a playoff setting, and especially advantageous for if the Thunder just do their job and if they win it in 5 or less, I'd even give them a loss to the Grizzlies. If you win it in 5 or less, you will be set up perfectly in round 2, because I fully believe that Denver Clippers series, regardless of what happens Monday night, we're recording this right before that game tips off, regardless of what happens Monday night, that series is going to go a long ways, and you can have rest on the back end before round 2, which will be good. And Chet was awesome. We'll talk more about Chet. We'll talk about keys to game 2 all coming up. We're back on the Locked On Thunder podcast, on the Locked On Podcast Network, your teams every day. Joining us today is Michael Martin at Michael on Sports. Let's talk Thunder on YouTube. Michael, keys to game 2. My first one, and it might be a little out there just because of what the new ball coach in Memphis has seemed to want to do. Stop banishing Luke Kennard to the bench. I know that he can't defend. I get it. No one on your team's defending. Like, no one on your whole team's defending. What can Luke Kennard do, though? He can hit open shots. What do the Thunder concede a lot of the times? Corner three-point shots. What do your playmakers not do well? They don't make decisions very well. So if you give them someone just sitting in the corner whenever they're harassed out on their drives, you pray to God that Ja Morant and Desmond Bane are good enough to just kick the ball to the corner and see what Luke Kennard can do from 3. I do not get why he was shackled to the bench. I do not get why that focus has changed other than his defense and lack thereof. But when you get 131 points, at some point, you got to change your mindset. You got to change your belief system.
Yeah, I was thinking about that while we were recording this. Why not? What do you have to lose? What are you going to lose by, more than 51? Probably not. And the thing is, like, if you just look at it in the context and didn't look at the score, and I told you that one team played 11 guys in the first 13 minutes and the other team didn't, you go, well, that team's grasping for straws. Their coach is throwing darts at the board. He's trying to get anything to stick. Nope, that was the team that was up. The team that was sticking with their rotations and not really altering from it was the team that was down by 50 at one point, and I just think that's crazy. And I'm right there with you, just try to luck into a 7 for 10 game from 3 from Luke Kennard. Like, I don't think that's impossible. The Thunder are good defensively, but they give up a lot of threes, and the Thunder are going to sell out on Ja Morant, even if Luke Kennard's on the floor, and if he starts making shots, it's going to open things up for them. So I just don't see what you can possibly lose, because we've already seen what it looks like with guys like Vince Williams and other guys on the floor for this Grizzlies team. And, right now the Grizzlies are in a no-win, but almost a no-lose situation, because as long as you don't play as bad as you did in Game 1, there's nothing possible you can go wrong. It almost brings me back to Zach Lowe's point a few years ago remember the Blake Griffin Pistons team played the Bucks? They were just super outmatched. They were like the number 1 seed. He's like, why don't the Pistons just do something crazy and just shoot all threes the entire game and just try to get lucky? The Grizzlies could come out and say that's our game plan, and I couldn't go at them and go, you know what, that's not smart. That's not something you should try to do, because at this point, Rylan, what are they supposed to do? We know they're capable of playing better, but to get a win, it just seems almost like you're just fantasy booking something like a Disney movie of all these things that have to go right and things that have to go wrong for the Thunder. So I think that's a really good point of keys to the next game is the Grizzlies just free Luke Kennard.
Yeah, and you look at the Grizzlies situation, it's 2 things that jumped out about your answer and about this series. Number 1, I would agree that the Grizzlies are not trying to win this series. They can't win this series, and they know that, and they acknowledge that they're not title teams. I mean, before the game even tipped off and he knew that he was going to lose by 50, their head coach said, the pressure's on OKC. We're not supposed to win the series. Like, it's supposed to be OKC that dominates this series. And so far, the Thunder have dominated the series. But with that in mind, I struggle with, okay, Marvin Bagley is a better option to throw out there if you're Memphis, and he played really well yesterday, and you don't want to take anything away from him playing really well yesterday. But if you're going to lose the series with or without switching Zach Edey's minutes and kind of playing Zach Edey off the floor, wouldn't you then rather just play Zach Edey and let him be terrible, but let him grow, let him learn what it takes and see what it takes in the playoffs and learn from that failure, which is something that the Thunder have done, is learning from their failures. So it's a weird thing when you talk about adjustments of, 1, the Grizzlies are just too shallow to make many adjustments, but 2, the one adjustment that you can even or 2, because we've already said Luke Kennard, but the other one would be like Zach Edey's minutes. But I wouldn't want to put Zach Edey on the bench just because he's terrible. I'd rather let him learn and let him develop, which goes against everything that you think of when you think of playoff basketball. Like, when you think of playoff basketball, it's the Nuggets benching Michael Porter Jr., even though he's their guy, and even though he's someone that they've invested in. Hey, it's the playoffs. This is what's best for the team right now. What's best for the team is to play Marvin Bagley more. But I just would rather see the developmental curve of Zach Edey if I was Memphis, because you're not going to win this series with that little adjustment, or even with both of our adjustments that we've given them. So that jumped out as well. And then you look at Memphis, and the reason I'm faltering on my Thunder, in 5, because clearly the Thunder would still have to win 4 out of the first 5 games. So one game shouldn't sway that. But when I was mapping out how Memphis gets one game, I earmarked game 1 and I earmarked game 3, because last year, game 1, the Thunder came out a little rusty, rest versus rest with their time off against New Orleans. New Orleans had a great shot to win that game. They just fell a bit short. And if that CJ shot goes in, the Thunder still win the series in 5, but at least it's a gentleman's sweep and not an actual sweep. And so I was looking at game 1. It's an earlier tip-off. You're kind of like that number 11 seed in the NCAA tournament. You've played a game, you're hot, and that's kind of primed for upsets in the college ranks. It was not so much in the NBA ranks. And now you're looking at game 3. But game 3 at home, and I love the Memphis crowd. I love the Grindhouse, FedEx Forum, all this, Beale Street, all this stuff. But if you just get shellacked twice in a row, is that going to be enough juice to get you a win against a historically great team? Probably not. And then you're looking at what you said, Disney stuff. Like, you're hoping that OKC comes into game 2 lackadaisical and comes into game 2 taking their foot off the gas after a big win. But that would spit in the face of everything that the Thunder have done this year and what they've built as a culture of 0-0, what they've accomplished for their entire rebuild of having that 0-0 mindset. So I don't believe the Thunder will come out here any which way but great on Tuesday night. And they've talked about that from the time the buzzer ended through today's practice, about how it was only game 1 and it kind of doesn't matter anymore because the game's over. So I really struggle now to see the path for Memphis to steal that one game. But we'll see. I think that's the most they can hope for, is stealing one game.
Yeah, to your point about playing the young guys, like even G.G. Jackson, who was he out for Easter or something? I don't know. He wasn't there. I would throw him out there, and the Grizzlies already admitting you can't win the series. So get your young guys out there like Edey and see what you have, because trust me, a big trade is coming this summer. I don't know who it's going to be, but there's going to be a move, because you can't just stay with this roster again after they fired the coach and nothing changed. If anything, it got worse. But I'm right there with you. I think that the Grizzlies coming back to Memphis down 2-0, I'm at the point where I'm almost starting to research, what's the biggest point differential in a sweep in NBA history, because these teams just don't really match up well is a big part of it, as bad as the Grizzlies are, because we know they're not they're not as bad as we saw on Sunday. We saw them play really well against this Warriors team, which might look like the second best team in the West so far in the playoffs through one game for every single series. So there's still a lot there. And then other keys that I have is just more of the same from Dub. Obviously we saw that he goes 0-for-5 from 3, doesn't get to the line, but just a lot of those same things of sort of controlling the game and taking care of business. And then one more sort of throwback to the point you made about the Thunder and what we know about them. Game 1 was sort of iffy against the Pelicans, but after that, they never looked back. Not another game was really, really close, other than game 4, there were some times when Josh Giddey hit some really big threes to sort of close that series out. And I don't think that would happen in this one either, where I think that as soon as they sort of just broke the seal of oh, these guys can't play with us, I think that it's over. And I think this team that has had sort of, I don't want to say championship aspirations, but they've kept the big picture in mind, they're going to know that it's in their best interest not to mess around and jack around and to get this series over with as fast as possible.
And the craziest part about the extension of the regular season for this first round series, which I think is accurate, is AJ Mitchell got to play a lot yesterday. And AJ Mitchell is a guy who conventional wisdom would tell you that he shouldn't be a factor in the playoffs because he was really good pre-injury, but then he got hurt and missed the second half of the season and only got to come back for the last 2 games. But if you get to work him into all 4 of these games or 5 of these games, however long the series goes, you get to work him into meaningful minutes that could be a huge revelation later on in the playoffs whenever you're playing a better team and a better defense and your secondary unit isn't clicking as much as it was on Sunday, and you need a table setter and a guy who can play off the ball, which is right up AJ's alley, which is why we were praising AJ Mitchell for the first half of his rookie season. So AJ Mitchell getting these low leverage opportunities is big, but also the AJ Mitchell sub in that made me perk up a bit. He checked into the first quarter, and I just thought about how Mark loves offense defense and how he would so often just rush over Lindy Waters to the scores table to bomb in the 3 and hope to capitalize on every single possession. And it's just how far this team has came in this short time. They've fleshed out a roster where you've went from rushing over Lindy Waters, say, go, try to hit a 3, to Ajay Mitchell, who's like a legitimately good NBA player. And he's just a guy that's a throw-in at the end of offense, defense possessions, at the end of the first quarter, and then ends up getting to play a lot once the score got lopsided. But Ajay Mitchell could be his series, could see a lot of him if these games continue to trend this direction.
Yeah, I think to your point, like even, Caruso hasn't been the healthiest guy historically. Maybe he twists an ankle, and if you have AJ Mitchell now primed, instead of throwing him in cold in the second round, that's going to make a huge difference that he's had this time to sort of shake off that rust, get adjusted to the playoffs somewhat, which, it's going to get higher leverage as we go on. But it's a big deal to have even more depth pieces like that. And I think a big part of it is there's no screw around with the second unit of this Thunder team either. Like Kenrich Williams, Aaron Wiggins, those guys aren't going to just get in. It's like, you know what? It's my time to put up some shots. We're going to mess around here. Like, they're in kill mode, engaged just the same way that the starters were as well. And then just let's see some more Chet. Let's see some more playoff Chet. I don't want to say playoff P or playoff C, but I thought that he looked awesome in game one just throughout the night in his limited minutes. But I'm ready for game two.
Yeah, game two should be fun. And I think that Chet looked the best he's looked and most comfortable he's looked alongside Isaiah Hartenstein, but also just his shot. Something as simple as like the quickness of his release, the smoothness of his mechanics, that was all much improved in this one game. And so you're seeing him come around a bit. We'll see how he levels off throughout the rest of the postseason. But it was a banner night for OKC in game number one. They literally dropped the banner in game one whenever they dropped the divisional banner. But Michael, what are you cooking up on Let's Talk Thunder?
Still working on this video that I sort of teased the last couple of weeks about the Thunder being potentially the greatest regular season team of all time. Not saying they are, but like let's at least have the conversation, because it's not all about just 73-9. There's some other discussion points with sort of their regular season dominance. So I'm going to put it in perspective with other teams that have won at least 68 games, which is only 6 other teams, how this Thunder team fares compared to them, and then hopefully what it looks like in the playoffs past game one.
Let's check that out at Let's Talk Thunder. Subscribe to Locked On Thunder anywhere you get your podcast from, and including on YouTube for both Locked On Thunder, Let's Talk Thunder. And until next time, whenever we're recapping game two of the first round series, be good and be good to one another.